and welcome to the DM's Travel Book Club, a guide to the inner planes. Each episode, we explore one of the inner planes of existence as outlined in the great wheel cosmology in the role-playing game Dungeons and Dragons. We are back. We're back for round 2 of our Travel Book Club. My name is Fiona, and as always, I have my wonderful travel co-pilot, Hamilton.
Hey, yes, I'm Hamilton. I'm very excited to be traveling the planes once again with you, Fiona. As we were talking earlier in our other realm of book clubbing about how much I've been enjoying just being back reading some of this 2E books just because of the fun, engaging way that it's written. And so I'm glad to be here. Back. Yeah, it's seeing what the worlds are like outside the realms.
Yeah, no, and it's been a little time since we've done our little travels, obviously, because we our previous travel book club from the outer planes perspective, we did that over a year ago now, and now Planescape is finally out for a new edition, and we thought, well, there must be other planes out there, other interesting.
Fiona, we started this journey 2 years ago.
So I realized that, and I'm now like, oh my god, like
I know how freaky is that, but there you go.
It's you know what, I've accepted it. And I've taken it away. But yes, because why go to the outer planes? Because there's 16 of those, not including like Sigil and the actual Outlands. Why do we go inside? So, like Hamilton, like, what are the inner planes? What are we looking at when what do we mean when we talk about the inner planes?
Well, the fundamental building blocks of reality. It is the home of the elemental planes, not only the 4 ones that you know and love, I hope, depending on your predilections in life.
I don't know much about Earth.
Bloody Earth. But, you know, Earth, air, fire, and water. I got those right this time.
Yes, you did.
But not only that, there are these energy planes of positive and negative, which are equally interesting. Beyond that, then there are these things known as the paraelementary planes, which are the 4 planes that bridge the gaps between the 4 main planes. So with that, I'm going to make sure I get these right. You have ice, ooze, magma, and smoke.
Yes.
And those are interesting, and those are the intersections of the other planes. And then there are 4 quasi-elemental positive planes and 4 quasi-elemental negative planes.
What?
The positive ones being the interactions between the positive energy and earth, water, fire, and air. So that is lightning for air, steam for water, mineral for earth, and radiance for fire.
Whoa, love that.
And then the negative quasi-elemental planes of vacuum for air, salt for water, dust for earth, and ash for fire. And that is the inner planes in a lovely little sphere.
in a lovely sphere, little nutshell there. Because we're taking our sort of reading from the Inner Planes 2nd edition book that sort of came out with the Planescape on. And there is an absolutely cracking image about how this looks as well, because this is one of the things that I struggle to get my head around, certainly with the outer planes, this idea that it's basically almost like it is a wheel of some sort, but then the inner planes is more of a sphere, and everything is interconnected in some way. So there's a great image that cuts it in 2, and you can see both the positive and the negative versions of the elements and stuff. So
they're so much more interconnected in this way, unlike where the outer planes are very much like their individual sort of realities, each individual plane that then has its relationship to the Outlands only, really. Like the interconnectedness between one another is more abstract and about the belief, which is the key difference, which we'll probably come on to, and the reality, sort of the way of the beings of that land and the alignments. Whilst here it's definitely just physical proximity to one another creates varying attributes and creates these different elemental planes and quasi-elemental planes.
Absolutely. So it's not, admittedly, this series is going to be a lot shorter than our previous Travel Book Club series. So our plan so to speak. Is obviously this is like a quick intro, a quick elemental primer that we're going to look at and sort of discover sort of an overview of all the sort of the planes, and then we're going to go on to our first two elemental planes, which are air and earth, and then we're going to go on to the fire and water. We're going to try and like double them essentially, almost like the not well, kind of opposites. We'll come on to the philosophy of that as well. Then we're going to go on to the energy planes, that positive and negative, and then go on to the quasi planes and sort of do them as there. So it's I'm looking forward to it because again, like I said, I've had no knowledge really of this before. You know, I've heard of like fire elementals and like City of Brass, and so it's to me to go like, this is a really interesting place. Why would we want to go here? Well, I think it's the thing.
It's a good question. And I think, like, well, for example, a good one and always comes to mind when I talk about them, and Critical Role is always a good touchstone for a lot of people who play D&D. And I know not everyone's watched it, but I'm using it because hopefully a big proponent of people will have known it. But in that, they go to the Fire Elements plane, they go to the City of Brass. But in that, there are beings that have come from folklore from around the world. So Efreeti and Jinn are beings that we can find out there. And also one of the key playable races that we have, the Genasi or Ganassi, however you pronounce it, that this is their home worlds. They are born of the elemental power into a humanoid form. And that this is the sort of like, the reality that they come from. So reasons for going, well, if you've got a Genasi, maybe this is there's a link for your own familial connection. On top of that, if someone tells you there's a plane which is basically pure minerals, I mean, I don't really have to spell that one out for you, do I?
Money, gems.
Exactly. And then on top of that, I mean, there's the plane of the negative energy plane is a plane of undeath. It is the home of undeath. In theory, it is the life-draining energy of reality, and so it is the power that feeds necromancers, and undead beings can exist there for quite a long time. So there's other reasons. Maybe a vampire that you are trying to take down, say some von Straudovich character.
I don't know who you're talking about.
Maybe someone tries to escape to somewhere that they think they would be safe, where it's going to be much more harder for you to exist in. So, that could be a boss battle level 2 sort of thing. I don't know. These are off the cuff ideas. These
are off the top of the head of Hamilton ideas. I love them. Put them in.
Thank you. But why would you go there, Fiona?
Why would I go there? Well, possibly to get some magic item, but more. There's always that. Everyone's always out for greed in these places. But also, I mean, we've discussed again in our other book club. The Book of Many Things. So maybe you've been sent there by one of the cards. Maybe you are trapped there and trying to get out. Because obviously that was something, like as you said, in about Critical Role. And just to really clarify about the structure of this, of how it's perceived, because I think sometimes it's a little bit hard to say when we say like a wheel or a sphere. Imagine like the positive and the negative planes are like the north and south pole essentially, and then at the points around sort of the circumference is the elements of fire, earth, water, and air, and then in between those places where they mix up is the paraelemental and the quasi-elemental planes. So I think that was the thing I was really struggling with, was trying to visualize it, that it is rather than like the wheel as we talked about before, it is a proper 3D shape, absolute sphere, which again, great image of it there.
I think the other thing, just talk about like other connections then between the worlds, is I forgot what the dustmen are called now. I keep forgetting.
The Heralds of Dust.
Heralds of Dust. Their home plane, where they have an outpost, is in the negative energy plane.
Is it? Wow.
Yes.
However,
Fiona, if you are playing 5e, you will find that there is no longer a negative energy plane.
Is there not?
No. So this is, I mean, play the game how you want to play it. Bring this in, and no one's telling you have to be post-Spell Plague, but the Spell Plague is what caused the intermingling of the negative energy plane, positive energy plane. There was a whole big catastrophe which did change the sort of cosmology a little bit around here. And that's what brought upon us the Shadowfell, is where the negative energy plane broke up and intermingled with our material plane and created the Feywild is similarly afflicted in the positive planes to create a mirror split of our of our reality. So the Shadowfell is a mixture of the negative energy plane and something else I can't remember. But yeah, so the other elementals still exist in the current setting, but that's just
there's not, to be fair, as with that we talked about in the DM's guide on the outer planes stuff as well, very very limited stuff until sort of the planescape stuff has come along as well. Interesting. I did not know that. I just to be fair, I hadn't heard of a negative energy or positive energy, so I was like, oh brilliant, and I hadn't even bothered to look at the 5th edition. That's how up to date I am with this.
I think I don't know if the positive's still around. It's all very weird, confusing D&D lore. well this is a much simpler one.
Yeah, definitely, and it's therefore certainly it's something that we will check out as we go along. So, as we've sort of talked about, like obviously the different elements and like how it's structured, and what we're expecting in the run up to this through this series, but there's some philosophies around like what can we expect from the inner planes compared to the outer planes, because ultimately in the outer planes, the stuff like sigils, the issues with like the Lady of Pain, the Blood War, those are so separate to this. And in fact, as something I didn't realize is that the sort of the around the place, the way you get to these places using the I'm going to get this wrong now, the astral,
ethereal.
Oh,
ethereal
damn! I questioned myself halfway through. The ethereal plane is how you get around to these. One of the ways you get around to these planes. Whereas the astral is what you do with the outer planes. I did not realize that they were two separate things. I thought astral and ethereal were interchangeable. Which again, at some point, we will need to look at both of those planes as well and what the main differences are between them. But
ethereal, in my mind, is Fiona. Astral is Hamilton. Think of it that way, because ethereal is where ghosts and ghouls and undead beings like to travel. And then the astral is where spelljammers like to fly around, and there's all color wheels and stuff.
Classic. Okay, I'll take that.
I'm just thinking of a simple I
love that. That makes it straightforward for me, so I very much appreciate that. But then, so what? I guess. What do we know of this place? What are the main sort of philosophies that are connected to the inner planes when we're looking at them?
I mean, that's the fundamental part of it as well, is that unlike the outer planes, as I was saying earlier, that is philosophical in nature. It's all about belief. It's all about what your alignment is. And places are defined by the actions of the people within them, as we know very well. Always go back to one of the A's, Arcadia. I think Arcadia and its final layer becoming too evil and therefore losing its balance of good, so becoming true neutral and ending a true law, and being chucked over into Mechanos. That doesn't happen here.
No.
Here it is purely it is the building block. It literally is, it states in here, it is the greybeards. I love how it calls them that all the time. But they are the basic building blocks that have created the material plane. It is like the fundamental energies that have then come about with the reality that we exist in, or the people of the D&D worlds exist in. And so what we're experiencing in this world is really the just extreme fundamental, like, as if I imagine it like getting right down, as if we could go down the microscope, but if it was D&D science, because we go down and we find quarks and all those things. What they find is just earth blocks and air blocks.
Very much like sort of Minecraft in a way. That's how I see
exactly.
it.
And so this is just where all those earth blocks and air blocks come from. Because it even mentions that, if you look at it, it talks about the alchemy, and it says that a poison is just built up. So it says, the truth is a body can look at anything this way. A diamond is earth mixed with positive energy. Glass is earth and air. And poison gas is air with a little water and negative energy. All the different materials that comprise the multiverse are just different combinations of these elements. So that's just a way of, that's how I see it, is it's just, here is where everything that feeds into the reality is at its most elemental, in that sense.
Yeah, so the aspects have always been here. They talked about, like, it's balmy to think about discovering any of these inner planes. Like, it's almost like when we discover elements here, up the table, that we just, it's all about us gaining knowledge of them, but we've not discovered them. They're not brand new. They've not just popped into existence. They're already here. I really liked in the book, it talked about this example of like the wood in a living tree is part earth, part water, but it's imbued with the resonance of positive energy, as all living things are. But when you cut the wood, it keeps a little of that positive energy, but slowly the spark fades away, and wood that's particularly light has less air to it, but which replaces the solid dense earth, and it's just breaking it down to its basic elements and stuff. And it's something maybe you can get a bit navel gazing, to be fair, but it's such a different view to what we've come from, which is the outer planes, and that you said there, sort of the alignment stuff, which is that's the point of view. Whereas here is that it is obviously elements, and so you've got to break it down to the most basic things that everything is comprised of.
And I think then the other question I was going to ask you then, so because you've been asking me the questions.
Oh no, damn it!
Who then, if this is a place that it has been before, then who lives here, Fiona? Does anyone live here?
Oh man, well, people would assume that nobody lives here, because like who would live in places that are so, just so fierce and so brutal to live in? But then again, in the outer planes, there were people that were living in places like limbo and pandemonium and all that sort of thing. We don't know ultimately how many of these creatures are living in these places. Like, we've talked about like, elementals themselves, Ganassi, Ifrit, as you've sort of said. But also, it talks about like how you could also have small bands of like chosen families and of these quasi and paraelementals, and how the DM would come across that, and maybe just giving them a bit more intelligence as like groups of people that you would actually come across and socialize with and possibly trade and stuff, and giving them characters to it, which I thought was really interesting. It also talks about the idea of alignment a little bit, saying that most of the elementals, they're actually true neutral in their alignment. And that there are good and evil ones, but they usually serve something called, and I'm going to say this wrong, absolutely, acromental, like it's an elemental of great power that's unique to each of the plane, so sort of a slightly higher up sort of leader essentially. Elementals themselves are more likely to sway towards sort of chaos and law, but they actually become different beings as a result of this. So those seems to be the ones that you would probably most likely see as beings that are a part of it. There's recently released, there was the Disney Disney/Pixar film Elemental, actually, which is all these people made up of all the different elementals, which is what I imagined for this sort of thing here. Except with that particular film, obviously all the elements were living together, whereas this is unlikely you'd have a water elemental being on the plane of fire, just because it's probably very inhospitable to live there unless it had lots of magic there. There are other things though, which I'm going to read from the list, because I'm going to say this one. There's like Elons, Eders, Chris, Hydrax, and other creatures have been transformed. These are the types have been transformed into. That's right. There's also fundamentals, which are minor elemental creatures.
And there's always like mephits and stuff, which as well. Which
mephits.
Little,
that was
which
it.
Look to me like little big spidery bug things.
Oh,
That's
really?
Kind of how
I always thought they were like little trolls, little things with wings. That's what I always thought of.
Okay, maybe I've got them mixed up then.
No, I like the fact that you've gone for something that's really horrifically like spider-like. Yeah, methods, and there's all the different kinds. But I think of it as almost like Pokemon in a way, like Eevee evolutions. But I feel like they're small, squat imp-like creatures. And there's also loads of creatures that aren't necessarily elementals or even sort of the kin. So you can have stuff like frost salamanders, fire bats, which is the one I really like. How metal does that sound?
That sounds really cool.
and obviously, again, we'll come to them when we explore them. But when we're looking at like the plane of vacuum or the magma, there's going to be specific creatures to them as well. So really, I mean, the answer is obviously you can think of the big ones like elementals, Ganassi, etc. But then you're like, anything could live here. Big.
Well, that's the thing. When we come to the air, every bird has been transported over there, or has gone over there, or anything that wants to fly, either ends up there, and things might just get taken there because the connections between the material plane, between the material plane and the elemental plane occurs at moments where these things are strong and defined. So, for example, if our world was connected in this way, you wanted to get to the plane of ice, you could go to Antarctica and there would probably be where there is large scale amounts of ice, you'll find gates that transport you into these planes. Like they say that sometimes that you will find in the world of D&D water elemental gates in waterfalls, or you will find plane gates to the airplanes in the middle of a tornado. Or go to a volcano to get into the plane of magma, etc.
Yeah, the one I saw was fire was either there's like fire vortexes, etc. But also like if you got there's a
vortices, I think you'll find.
Oh, sorry, vortices. I know. Yeah, after I learned, the more you know, vortices. Sorry, but also like the fire of a dragon is said to come from the elemental planes of fire. That's rumored to. So possibly one way is to be burnt in the fire from the dragon to be transported down. It's like, do you want to test out this theory?
That's a classic Planescape sort of, like, it has another one like that, isn't it? It's like, to get to the plane of air, you can jump into a tornado, but you may be ripped into shreds. Up to you.
Up to you. The other thing to mention, as we sort of talked about it in the outer planes quite a lot, this idea of the powers, these sort of deities and stuff. Same thing happens in the inner planes. They've got sort of elemental gods in a certain way. The most famous we would know about, obviously, is the elemental princes. The Princess of Evil, which obviously there is
Apocalypse book.
Apocalypse,
isn't it?
The Princess of the Apocalypse book. So elemental evil powers as well. And it's interesting because this particular book doesn't talk about. It says that the elemental princes of good struggle against their wicked counterparts, but they're not quite up to the challenge, which makes me wonder, like, what are the elemental princes of good? Because I only know from the sort of the evil ones in terms of, like, because the earth, fire, water, and air come into the Princess of the Apocalypse book. I'm like, what are the good ones? What is seen as good? And I'd like to explore those if they do come up. So
they do come up in the air one. I was reading about it, and and there's Yancy Bin.
I faced that person before. That didn't end well. Yes,
Sorry to bring it up.
No, I think I spoke about it before, but they turned up as an NPC. For a good couple of sessions, and then only much later after we finished the season, and from us talking about some sort of we must have talked about some elemental and something else, and I was like, oh my god, Yancy Bin, I'm having flashbacks now to the betrayal and also not being able to fight them.
I love that about D&D though. That's amazing. That's one of those great moments of
I'm a big fan of, like, as a DM, reading lots of stuff and then saying a bit of lore, and only one person at the table goes, oh no.
Yeah, exactly.
The Kevin McAllister, like, holding the face.
That's great. I think so moving away from people then, I think how do you traverse these planes? Because if these are infinite elemental planes that are pure fire, pure air, pure water, how do you get around?
Well, mostly it is through first things first, like any good tourist, you're like, well, how do I get around this place? I know, I'll hire an elemental guide, right? Because they're the people who live there, they know all the sites, they know how to get you from point A to point B, so hiring one of those is probably worth your while. And it's the same, again, lots of comparisons with the outer planes, I appreciate, same sort of thing, and the same in Sigil as well. The difference, though, is that elemental guides are probably quite costly. And they are costly in the sense of they probably don't want gold, because gold is useless to them. So maybe they need something else. In the book, it talks about, like, magical items, or maybe a service of some sort, or getting something to I don't know, even almost like a reputation thing as well. I think, like, the fire stuff, in the fire plane, for example, I think it talked about having, like, something to create even more fire, to be even more sort of like preening, that sort of element to it. But ultimately, if you want to hire one of these guides, it's going to cost you a pretty penny, and so it's better be worth going. And I think that's one thing we were going to talk about, was that idea of, like, if we wanted to do an inner planes campaign, similar to the Planescape stuff, we've talked about it before, like, what level is it appropriate to put players in? Because it's gonna be difficult, unless
it does depend on the plane, I think, as well. Like,
absolutely,
air, as it reads when you get to it, it's the easiest one, because firstly you can breathe. Done. And there's less things to hit and hurt you in it, because it's much more open. There's still things you've got to deal with, but if you're going to start anywhere, air is probably the easiest one, unless all your party can breathe on the water, and then water's probably a fun one. But yeah, you're right. What is the level? Because you got to have some sort of spell capacity. You can't go there spellless.
Spellless and and
itemless.
having some sort of magical items, or just being ready to take. Because as soon as you step into these places, those sort of environmental effects will hit.
Oh, yeah.
It's especially like, but I mean, obviously we're thinking about, fire can burn to a crisp instantly, water you'll drown, but that's not even the worst one, guys.
No.
It's like, let me tell you,
Radiance, you're blinded.
Yep. And vacuum, you just suffocate, and you're like, this is awful.
Dust, you do the dusting. You just start slowly turning into dust. Negative just drains your life. Positive energy plane imbues with healing magic so much, and when you double your healing capacity, you burst into a ball of light. But they do say that you potentially turn into a light being. So
yeah, but how likely is that?
Again, it's like classic Planescape. Could be good.
Would you want to?
I did talk about the traveling around. I did love, so that it does say that there is no north, east, south, and west. There's no like thinking about where you're going to go, like on the astral sea, where you can be like, I want to go that way. Unless you're on the plane of air, where that actually technically kind of works, but it's a bit different.
It's different,
but then additionally to that, if you keep walking, you just keep walking in infinity, unless you know where you're going. There were beacon seeds, which was the magical item that you can buy and imbue yourself with it, and then that will lead you to wherever you want to go, is like an inner compass. And you can buy a compass, but you don't know if that compass is the one you actually need.
It's very Jack Sparrow, Black Pearl, like that compass where it goes, it's to where your heart's desire. It's like, so I definitely saw that. Yeah, the eating seeds thing, I've never come across that before. I thought that was quite a cool little, like, you have to eat, you have to do something to your body in order to like go, like you said, that inner compass, that where the direction. You don't have something external, it has to be internal to your body, because obviously
I like that.
Anything that you have as an external thing probably could, as you said, might not work, might burn up, might explode, all that sort of thing.
And in and amongst it, there are places of safety as well. It mentions in the book, so there are areas where there might be, as it mentions, a Githyanki outpost, or a reputed city of dragons. I'm up for that one.
Your favorite,
surprisingly. And my favorite, Captain Soot, who pilots a magical the Ebony Queen and sails the inner planes like 18 individual seas, and you can get a little journey on there. And he's respected. And I'm having my little treasure planet fantasy a bit in that sort of thing. But
Captain Soot sounds like a great way to be like, ahoy adventurers, I'm off to the Radiant Plane, who's with me, ha ha.
Pirates
adventure.
and adventure with scientists kind of feeling. Captain, what's he called? Pirate Captain, that's it, isn't it?
Yes, Pirate Captain.
Pirate Captain. I was like, Captain Pirate? No, it's Pirate Captain.
Pirate Captain. And then obviously, as we said, using the ethereal plane to move through the inner plane without suffering severe environmental damage by crossing the required distance. So it's like popping in, popping back out, essentially, because as you said, otherwise it's infinite unless you know where you're going and stuff. So it's a nice sort of quick way, but that's not to say it's safe though, because there's lots of stuff in the ethereal plane, like devourers, phase spiders, other horrible things, which are like, you know what? It's probably much bigger than me.
Anything that's in the current setting in the Shadowfell is basically in there. As well. Yeah,
wouldn't do
that's
it.
Good fun.
Yeah, there's the ghosts of those killed in the inner planes. Plasmas. No, thank you.
No. But you can do it by going ethereal, which means your whole like astral projection. There's that etherealness spell, which you might have used, or when you do those things, that's when you transmit part of your body into the ethereal plane, and you kind of become ethereal, but you're still slightly connected to the material plane.
You have a line between you,
so there's that sort of, which is like astral projection, which is a way that you could travel both of those a bit. So they just mention that.
It would be remiss though if we didn't talk, because you mentioned safe havens, we might as well just quickly talk about elemental pockets.
I was going to ask you, yes. Do you want to talk about elemental pockets?
Quickly talk it. So obviously,
2.5, 3 pages, 4 pages.
Okay. Admittedly, not everything in this book is as entertaining as interesting. We say this, like, obviously at certain points you're like, but what if there is other elements? What if they're in the airplane? You sort of come across a a pocket of Earth, for example, what would that look like? It's very dull, to be honest. Like, obviously, you could have these like floating islands of the different elements appear in certain things. It's common sense what would happen. Like, for example, if there's going to be a sphere of water that appears in the plane of fire, that's going to be great. However, it's going to boil away instantly into probably steam, and then that's probably going to evaporate as well. And there's stuff about like, like Earth being chomped. Yeah, like fire is always consuming, so all these sort of pockets will disappear, and the same for like, oozes, vacuum, all that sort of thing. And I will say, like, it is very detailed about what pockets can do, what dangers will happen if you enter such a pocket in a different realm if you're not expecting it. Yes, we expect that to happen. I think just common sense here would win out, because otherwise you're rolling lots of dice for like the size and the width and the modifiers of these spheres. I think just go with your gut. I think that's the only thing I think we could have easily made this, rather than like just rolling for the exact dimensions of how big this thing is. It's just like, it's a 5x5, it's a 10x10, it's a 30x30, like, and then roll, I don't know, sphere, oblong, all that, all just cuboid, that just giving out the different shapes, and that's all you need from that.
I think you're right, and that's why it's not quite boring. It's just, you could easily, most of us would just look at it and go, well, I can tell what that's going to be, and so I don't really need to read this unless I need to read it, if you know what I mean. It's that moment.
It's a worthwhile, like, a random encounter, because the other thing as well to say is that all these pockets might have inhabitants on it, because you might, oh, thank God, some water in the plane of dust. I need that quickly. Oh, there is something inside it. Oh dear. I've just drunk half the lair. So
just imagining the I forgot what the name, the one that's in outside Moria in Lord of the Rings, but I forget the name. It's got a name for it. The tentacled outside Moria.
Oh, the creature in the lake. Yeah,
it has got a name, the creature in the lake, but I can't remember the old one. It's not called the old one because that's Cthulhu, but it's something along those lines.
Yeah, exactly. But you can imagine that sort of creature going, hello, like, ooh, dinner time. But again, no doubt this will come up as we're sort of playing through. But yes, we have to admit there are elemental pockets. It's common sense what happens with them. Don't read those 3 pages.
Then you mentioned the powers. You mentioned the things. I think combat. It does go into this again.
Yes. You have a bone to pick with this. I'll be honest, I always struggle with combat anyway, and I know from what we did with the outer planes last time was that obviously there were conditions about, if you were certain alignments, etc., and then there were certain parts about like, like maybe some spells won't work here, etc. Here, I think the stuff that makes sense, similar, that's what I was going to say, with the alignment stuff. Obviously, certain spells might not work or work too well or not work at all. Here it's the same, but with the elemental stuff. It makes sense that creatures on the plane themselves, sort of like a fire elemental, they're not going to use their fire breath at you, because why would they do that? They'll be immune to the fire themselves, but why would they use that attack? So they might just do a punch action. So as I talked about, like, when you're doing combat with these creatures, it's very likely that you've gone into the realm of fire with fire magic protection. So you to get a fire breath, it's not going to be as damaged. So just thinking about the other attacks that this creature would do, because it would probably be attacking against creatures that have fire resistance anyway. And then they had the no gravity thing, which again makes sense for some of these realms, that they don't necessarily have a ground. The sky is everywhere. Again, it felt very nitpicky to me about how certain things work. It always goes on about shields. Like, with a shield, like here in front of you, but attack from above, you don't get the shield bonus. But if you moved it above, then you would get the shield bonus, but then you're unprotected. It's like, well, obviously. But what if you're wearing a helmet? I don't know. There's just a lot of that sort of like things where I was just just get rid of that. We don't, because for me,
I just think it's not useful.
The gravity stuff, I just feel like is like, is it supposed to be like you could just float around and attack up? Like, you can attack three different ways, not on the ground or to the side of you, but up in the air, and you can move. Is it a 3-dimensional map that you're doing now?
Well, I love how when we get to Spelljammer, they just say everyone's on the same plane.
Yeah.
so it kind of works there, which makes it easier. But the only thing I have a bone to pick with is, as I said, attacked from below get advantage.
Yeah.
No, I have the higher ground. I get advantage. It's just wrong. If they're going to make that distinction, people from below get people from above have the better. Anyway,
yeah.
But apart from
you constantly should be flying above each other. Yeah, to fight
exactly.
up. Yeah.
Exactly. You've got to only strike down, not strike up. It's easy. Anyway, there you go.
Because especially because if you're striking,
you have to lift up rather than striking down.
It's also because you open yourself up to a lot more weakness. I think because this is all. I don't know. Anyway, what do I know about fighting? Nothing.
I just go with Obi-Wan Kenobi. He knows what he's talking about.
He does know what he's talking about.
The magical use then, I think, is pretty obvious. We've said that, haven't we? Really, I think the only thing is then the relationship then between that. Go. You were going to say something.
No, I was just going to say quickly on the magic stuff was so again very similar to the outer plane stuff. That certain spells won't work at all. There'll be like absolute prohibitions of certain of the opposites, which we haven't talked about a bit. Like there's a theory about the opposite of fire is water, and so as a result certain things won't work there. So like I said before, any water spells in the fire plane are gonna just not work or not happen at all. Trying to summon a water creature to the plane of fire is not going to work. So those things make sense. But then it talks about the elemental fusions as well. So for example, if you're casting a water spell while exploring the earth, for example, instead of a sparkling fluid, you get something that resembles a mud puddle instead. Yeah. I quite like that as a flavoursome thing. It's so you're casting this spell. Well, what would this look like in this environment? And I quite like that as a flavoursome thing. I don't know about the impact of damage or anything like that. I just thought that was a really cool way of putting it
just down to your DM to just make that decision. The other one then is. With that, the other key one is the relationship between the ethereal and astral, and how they are the inner and outer being very separate from one another, and they're not connected. The only connection between those two is the material plane. The material plane is where they overlap. So the ethereal is not connected to the astral, and in that regard, the outer planes are very unconnected from the inner planes. And so, if you want to banish someone to an outer plane, you want to contact one of those planes, you want to summon something from one of those planes, that can't happen if you're on the inner planes. So it just means that if you don't know that, I assume the DM's encouraged to be, it doesn't work for the first time, which is up to you if you want to do that, or just be the whole intelligence check to know, or something like that.
To work out that something's off with the magic. You can taste it in the air. There's also the other going on of that sort of flavoursome thing, saying spell variants as well. So this idea that maybe you currently as a wizard, you can do the breathe water spell, but you're like, oh, we need this for something else, and you're like, well, there's breathe fire, but you might need to go to a specialist place to get a scroll for that, so talking about how do we make these cool sort of homebrew spells. And that's what it actually encourages you to do. Get your players to think of things that would help you to do that, and then do a downtime exercise for that, which I thought was quite cool. They talked about transmute fire to smoke, breathe earth, sphere of survival, which sounded quite interesting. This was in the Planeswalker handbook. They were sort of talking about that. Elemental breach was also another fun one, and then it says the incredibly useful elemental protection. And I was like, I wonder if that comes up quite a lot.
A very useful spell in there. And that reminds me also on that sort of flavor thing, that the spell keys as well being just verbal elements that you can just add to the communication of it. So it's less triggered by, I thought it was going to be down the route of like it is in the outer planes, which very much when you're in a Borea, you take an extreme version of it, or when you're in the glades, you take down a twig, or I don't know, there was other ones that were very much more thematic to their place. So I assume these would be very much more thematic but they're actually not. They're just whispered words that help transmute what you're staying into effect in the plane that you're on, which I thought was quite fun.
Very cool.
And then finally, on the sort of the separation from astral ethereal is they have this, I like to call these optional rules. We mentioned this, and they had this in the outer planes, which is the distance between you and your deity, if you're a sage or priest, as they're called now again, then lose a level depending on the distance. So if you're in the inner plane and they're within the inner planes, then it's sort of 0 if they're adjacent to ethereal. But then if you go one other inner plane away, you move away. Or if they're in the outer plane, you could lose up to 3 levels of your spell slots. And then same with magical items, and this was the same again in the outer planes of every step you take. Not trying to be the police, but
I know, I was like, I'm very tempted. You make
away, they'll be watching. No,
they won't be watching. If anything, there'll be less connection to them.
There'll be less connection to them. But the same magical item. So if it was made in the plane of fire, you take it to the plane of water. You've lost one point of its magical +3.
Yeah,
so it goes to +2.
Which for me poses an interesting question as players, that every time you go to a very far away plane, if you're knowing that you're like, right, when we get there, we have to either go to the plane next door and get decent weapons there, and then just hope that it doesn't lose too much power, or buy weapons that you know what I mean. Like,
I would suggest if I was going to play this rule, it would be like you get a +1 on the plane of existence. You get, and that's it. Like I would, and then everywhere else it doesn't get a benefit. Do you know what I mean? So
yeah. So it doesn't.
A sword of fire play, because then it means, why on earth am I going to the plane of fire to get a really cool fire sword, and then I take it to the prime plane? It was a +3, now it's a -2. Well, what was the point?
Yeah, it's like, this is sad news. Yeah,
it's really sad. So it makes your chaos demon blade completely useless unless you're in the abyss, which I think is silly. So I'm like, on the abyss, +1 demon, you get like, it's a +3 where you get +4 when you're in the abyss, but that's not what you're there for. You take it to
I like that.
Hades, it's still a +3 or something like that.
I like that. You get a benefit for having it in the place where it was created, but you don't lose anything. I think that. Yeah,
that's how I kind of want to play it, because then it's like, I could do this really cool shit, but it doesn't really matter. And then I can do cool shit, but it's not stupid when I'm somewhere else. Yeah, absolutely. But it makes the quest useful.
Yes, absolutely. So I guess my big question to you, Hamilton, is like, where are you excited to go? What's the plane that you're most like hyped to go and visit?
Oh, hyped.
Just interested to go. All right.
I'm really interested to go to the mineral plane, because I've never really looked at those. I'm actually quite more interested in the quasi-elemental.
Yes, same.
Than I am than the others. So for me, it's got to be that, and the negative energy plane, because I think that's quite fun. What about yourself?
Obviously negative.
I thought
that's me, but I'm actually very interested in the para-elemental plane of the ooze.
Oh yes,
it got said that this is the most disgusting, gruesome place, and I was like, let's go.
Let's.
I think that
made me think of Taylor. You can't tell me what to do. Let's go.
Let's go. Absolutely. But also, like you said, like I think the mineral one will be interesting. But we've got stuff like salt. Salt was an interesting random one, which was I talked about like the tiniest bit I saw. Again, talking about those pockets from earlier, it draws out moisture, and eventually you just dry out because I'm like, what? Because you've been sort of like mummified or preserved.
I just kind of like the idea that you'd be like, if you lived in the water plane, right, and you were wanting, this food's feeling a little bit unsavory. You just, I know. Pinch a little bit of salt, just chuck it in there for a little bit, come back, lovely.
Like you go to the
I want this ham to be serranoed, send it to the
I was going to say, like, you go to the para-elemental plane of smoke to just quickly put your meats in, and then you go, this is perfect.
So this is my thing. You could imagine like a safe haven that is like or somewhere in Sigil, which is a restaurant that has all the cooking equipment is just miniature portals to different para-elemental planes. So it's like, have your steak salted in the plane of salt, seared on a slab of magma, and then garnished with a fresh water from the plane of water. Do you know what I mean? There's this sort of, you could imagine it, couldn't you? And loads of, and you just said smoking it in the smoke place and dusting a bit of ash on it. I don't know.
God, it's definitely like the ivy in the park, sort of like that's the adventure.
Want a bit of spice? Add a bit of negative energy plane sprinkles on there, or want some healing magic?
Or like, you know what, for dessert, the cream is obviously from the positive energy because you need to feel good about yourself.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Yes. Just put the meat in the positive energy plane for 15 minutes. Take it out.
I like basically what we've done. We said like, well, let's do the bear, but in the inner planes.
Yes. 100%.
But it hopefully will be a bit more comedic and a lot less sad and emotionally exhausting as a show.
Okay, now it is a bear wearing a chef hat. Working.
It is.
It's a bear. One thing that I thought that you haven't mentioned when you talk about people, and I thought this is Fiona. Fiona will mention them. The giants, the elemental giants are.
Oh yes, of course.
Are about.
Yes, they're about. Yeah, no, I'll be honest, I did miss them on my read through. But yeah, they're really cool. Like this, more giants and things. I've said that's bring back giants.
I just know you're a fan of the giants.
Yeah. Well, well, I guess it's interesting because both you and I are on the opposites. Because you love dragons, I love giants, and together they hate each other.
Yeah, exactly. But somehow it works. We are the diplomats for the ethereal and astral, and the giants and dragons.
Yeah, it should be called giants and gateways.
We are the and in D&D.
Oh man, rubbish. I think we should leave it there, to be honest.
Don't. That's such an awful ending.
So Hamilton, obviously, so this is just our introduction, our quick sort of primer into the elemental inner planes. What are we going to first? I've got my bags ready. I'm ready to go. What are the 2 planes we're going to look at next?
Well, we're going to start on the easiest one first. So pack your bags for a breezy ride into the endless blue of the plane of air, the elemental plane of air.
Okay.
And I'm just trying to find the fun name for the next one, which is it's the boundless blue. Apologies. And then we're going to go into the anvil, which is the elemental plane of earth.
Yes, how exciting! All right, well, I'll make sure I've got my cap ready so my hair doesn't get too windswept.
Bring your mining gear and a good windbreaker.
Yes, good windbreaker, good boots.
Maybe a parasol. Paraglider.
Paraglider. Yes. I'm not going to bring my parasol because I don't think I'm not Mary Poppins my way down.
This way. I mean, however you fancy traveling. A hot air balloon might be a good one for that. And then like maybe the thing that dug the Channel Tunnel. Do one of those, like they used in Ocean's 11, 12, 13, whatever it was.
8? I don't know. I don't know.
It was in 13, actually.
It was in 13. Fair enough. Great. No, well, I look forward to that. I'll do. But if in the meantime you're like, oh, where else can we find Travel Book Club stuff? Well, obviously we've got all of our Travel Book Club stuff on YouTube, so you can go check that out. But they're also out in audio form as well, so you can go and catch up on the Outer Planes as well. And as always, come out and check out the DM's the DM's Book Club, which is obviously we talk about other D&D stuff and how we could improve it for our own campaigns. I think that's it, unless you've got anything else to add.
I have nothing else to add. So I don't think there's anything more to say, is there, Fiona, then? See you on the flip side of the planes.
Of the inner planes.
Of the inner planes.
I was like, I don't know if we've got this yet.
We'll see you on the flip side of the sphere.
See you on the flip side of the sphere.
Bye, everyone.